The mule nearly screamed when it caught the scent of the Exile camp. Eli Carver had expected that. He'd packed the animal with 200 pounds of dry goods, rope, lamp oil, salt pork, and a folded canvas tarp, and he'd been climbing the switchback trail into the Red Canyon for the better part of 3 hours under a sky the color of hammered tin. The wind came off the high desert in long, cold rips that cut straight through his coat. He gripped the lead rope, wrestled the mule past a crumbling shelf of sandstone, and kept walking. He'd heard the camp was up here. He'd heard it from a farrier in Redwall town who'd said it with a sneer, and from a boy at the water trough who'd said it with frightened eyes, and from nobody else because nobody else had been willing to say anything at all. There was an orc woman exiled up in the Thornback Canyon, they said. One of the Bloodhorn clan, the kind who'd rip your arms off for looking at her wrong. Eli had listened. He'd nodded. He'd bought the supplies, loaded the mule, and started walking. He was 3 days into a new caravan post hired on as a guard for the southbound Iron Road run that was supposed to leave in 6 days, and he didn't owe this woman anything. He knew that. He'd been reminding himself of it the whole climb. He'd never met her. He didn't know her story. He just knew what the innkeeper's wife had whispered the night before, which was that the Exile camp had been up there for 2 weeks already, and nobody in Redwall had sent a single scrap of food because nobody in Redwall wanted to be the person who helped an orc, and the first hard frost of the season was due any night now. That was enough for Eli Carver. That had always been enough for Eli Carver, which was, some might argue, his central problem. He smelled the camp before he saw it wood smoke, cured hide, and the faint, sharp scent of iron. Then the canyon widened around a jutting red wall, and there it was. A single lean-to shelter built against a vertical face of rock, framed with cut branches and covered with a heavy oilcloth that had seen better decades. A fire ring with a low, careful fire. A bedroll that was really just a folded saddle blanket. A spear planted point up in the dirt like a flag with no color to show. And standing in front of all of it, watching him come, was Azra Bloodhorn. She was tall, nearly a head taller than him, and Eli wasn't a short man. She wore fitted warrior's leathers the color of dried blood, the bodice cut close to a powerful frame, and laced down the front with cord that caught the firelight in dark amber loops. Her trousers were tucked into flat-soled canyon boots, and a short-bladed knife rode her right hip like it had grown there. Her tusks curved upward from a strong jaw, ivory bright against dark green skin, and her dark eyes were set beneath a heavy, expressive brow that was currently doing something between calculation and open contempt. Her black hair was pulled back from her face in a tight, practical knot, and the Bloodhorn clan markings ran down the left side of her neck in raised lines of deep crimson pigment, the traditional scarification of a warrior lineage. She did not move. She watched him wrestle the mule to a stop 20 feet from her fire, and she watched him drop the lead rope, and she watched him wipe his hands on his coat, and not once did her expression change. "Who sent you?" she said. Her voice was low and careful, the accent of the eastern orc territories working through her common speak like stone grinding under water. "No one," Eli said. The silence that followed was so complete he could hear the wind moving through the canyon rims high above them, a sound like breath held too long. "No one," she repeated. "No one," he confirmed. He jerked a thumb toward the mule's loaded panniers. "I brought salt pork, dried beans, 2 kinds of flour, lamp oil, a canvas tarp that's bigger than what you've got up, and a fair amount of rope. There's a wool blanket in there too. The frost is coming tonight, I think. Maybe tomorrow night at the latest." She stared at him. He'd been stared at before. He'd been a caravan guard for 11 years, and he'd been stared at by bandits, by angry merchants, by men twice his size who'd wanted to establish something, and by more than a few women who'd been establishing something entirely different. This stare was unlike all of those. It was thorough. It went through his coat and his face and probably came out the other side and looked around a bit before coming back. "You walked up here," she said. It wasn't quite a question. 3 hours. The mule didn't like the last switchback. Mule has good instincts. She hadn't moved. Her right hand was nowhere near the knife on her hip, but Eli noticed that it also wasn't far from it. "I'm not here to cause you any trouble," he said. "I'm a guard on the Fallow Road caravan. We pull out in 6 days. He stopped. He'd been about to say he just didn't think it was right and he wasn't sure if that would land the way he meant it. He tried again. "Winter hits these canyons hard. I've run the Iron Road 3 times. I know what the cold does up here." "I have survived winters before," Azra Bloodhorn said. There was nothing defensive about the way she said it. It was just a fact placed between them like a stone. "I don't doubt that." He meant it. "But surviving is easier with a proper tarp and something in your belly that isn't trail grass." She looked at the mule. She looked at him. The fire snapped behind her. "You did not ask the innkeeper's permission," she said. "The innkeeper is who runs the food trade in Redwall. The innkeeper is Dolph Marsh, and he's a greedy small man, and I didn't ask him anything." Something shifted in her face. It wasn't a smile. It was more like the possibility of a door cracked open just a fraction. "Unload the mule," she said. "I will not stop you." "That's generous of you," Eli said, and he said it straight, no edge to it, and he went to the mule and started working the straps. He worked quietly, carrying panniers over and setting them near her shelter, and she watched him the entire time with those steady dark eyes. When he hauled out the canvas tarp and started shaking it open to look at the grommets, she walked over, not fast, not slow, just the measured gait of someone used to moving through difficult terrain, and took the other corner without being asked. Together they rigged it over the lean-to, lashing it to iron stakes she already had driven into rock cracks, and then she added a second line from a high anchor that the previous cloth hadn't had, and the whole shelter transformed from barely functional to something that could actually keep the wind and sleet out. They stood back and looked at it. "Better," she said. "Much better," he agreed. She looked at him sideways. "You know rope work. Guards spend half their lives rigging or cutting things." A pause. "Your name?" "Eli Carver." He put out a hand. She looked at it for a moment with the same measuring look she'd given the whole situation, then clasped it briefly, her grip strong enough to make the point without making a production of it. Her skin was warm against his. "Azra Bloodhorn." She released his hand. "Of the Bloodhorn clan, or formerly of it." He didn't ask about the exile. Not then. He had the sense that the information was available in its own time, and that demanding it would be the wrong move in the way that most wrong moves in delicate situations were wrong, not dangerous, just irreversible. "I'll get a fire going," she said, "if you are staying." He was not sure in that moment whether it was a question or a statement. He chose to treat it like an invitation. "Salt pork takes about 40 minutes if the fire is right," he said. "I know how to cook salt pork," she said. "I know you do," he said. "I was just making conversation." She gave him a look that might have been the early stages of being amused. "Sit down, Eli Carver," she said. "You climbed a mountain for me. The least I can do is feed you before you climb back down." He sat. She built the fire up with a competence that was easy to watch, efficient and unhurried, each piece of wood placed with purpose. And the warmth rolled out into the darkening canyon, and for the first time all day, Eli felt the cold stop winning. He found out about the exile over the next hour, which was the right amount of time for it. She told it the way she seemed to do most things, without decoration, without self-pity, moving through facts the way she moved through terrain. She had been the warband lieutenant for the Bloodhorn clan's eastern contingent. The clan held treaty territory in the Thornback Range, a strip of canyon country that the Iron Road ran through, and the clan had been enforcing tolls on commercial traffic for 2 generations, legally, under a standing peace agreement with the Redwall territorial government. 6 weeks ago, a merchant named Garvo Penn had come through with a heavily guarded spice caravan and refused to pay the toll. When Azra's warband had moved to enforce the treaty terms, Garvo Penn had sent a runner to Redwall with a version of events that described an unprovoked attack and a robbery. He had money and Azra had a reputation, and in Redwall's territorial court, those were the 2 things that mattered most. The clan elders, to preserve the peace agreement, had offered her up. Exile for 6 months, no clan contact, no return to Bloodhorn territory. If she survived the exile without incident, the exile record would be expunged, and she could return with her rank intact. 6 weeks down, 4 months to go, and no one in the clan helped you get set up, Eli asked. The terms of the exile forbid clan contact, she said. She poked at the fire. They are honoring the terms, as am I, so you've been up here 2 weeks with whatever you came with. Yes. He thought about that for a long moment. The salt pork was good. She'd fried it in a flat pan with a little of the dried herbs she had in a pouch at her belt, and the smell of it in the cold air was extraordinary. Garvo Pen, Eli said. Big man, red beard, bad teeth, drives a spice caravan. She looked at him sharply. You know him. I've guarded his competitor's routes. He runs off-books cargo under the spice cover. I don't know what exactly, but I've heard enough around enough campfires to think it's nothing anyone ought to be helping. He lied, Azra said. Her voice was flat and certain as a blade laid on stone. I believe you, Eli said. She went still. Not stiff, not defensive, just still, the way a candle flame goes very straight before it brightens. Why? She asked. Because you haven't lied to me once in the last hour, he said. And because people who have nothing to hide don't usually bother dressing up the story. She looked at him for a long time across the fire. He held the look without making a competition of it, and after a while she went back to eating. They were quiet together for a stretch, and it was not an uncomfortable quiet. The canyon night came down around them, dense and cold and star-crowded, and the fire held its own against it, and somewhere far below in the canyon floor, a night bird called once and didn't repeat itself. Why did you come? She asked finally. The truth, not the frost. He turned that over. I heard the innkeeper's wife say there was an orc woman up in the canyon in an exile camp, and nobody was going to help her because nobody wanted the trouble, and I thought, that's wrong. That's just wrong. So I fixed it. Azra looked at him. That's simple. That's simple. You are strange, Eli Carver. I've been told. I did not mean it as an insult. She paused. Most humans who come to an exile camp come to make trouble or to stare. I'm not here to make trouble, and I've seen you now. Staring would have been its own reward, but it wasn't the point. He hadn't meant to say that last part with quite so much honesty, but it had come out that way, and there it was. The firelight moved on her face, and she watched him with an expression that had opened up a little, still careful, still measuring, but something underneath it that was alive and warm and not entirely closed off. You have 6 days before your caravan leaves, she said. I do. Come back tomorrow, she said, if you want. I want, he said. She nodded once, like that settled something. Then come back. He climbed back down the canyon trail in the dark with the empty mule and a feeling in his chest like a fire that had just caught on dry wood, warm, immediate, and not quite ready to be left alone. He came back the next day, and the day after that. He came back with more supplies the second day, less because she needed them, and more because it gave him a reason. And she seemed to understand that without his having to explain it. The third day he came empty-handed, and she said nothing about it. Just handed him a cup of something hot that turned out to be a canyon herb tea that tasted like pine resin and turned out to be excellent. And they spent the morning going over the lean-to structural problems and the afternoon talking about the road. She knew the Thornback country better than anyone he'd ever met. She'd grown up in these canyons, learned to track and fight and navigate in the red stone labyrinth that most people only knew as a hard 2-day stretch of the iron road. She knew the passes, the bad weather patterns, the spots where rock slides came down after rain, the 3 places where the road could be cut off by flash flooding. She talked about all of it the way Eli talked about caravan logistics, with a working professional's specificity, stripped of drama, full of useful detail. On the 4th day, he sat beside her on the canyon rim at sunset, their legs hanging over nothing, 500 feet of red stone dropping away below them to a thin silver thread of river, and she pointed out the pass he'd be running in 6 days and told him exactly what to watch for. There is a shelf road 3 hours south of the river crossing, she said. just after the two copper-colored pillars. On the left side, the rock is rotten. It looks solid, but it sheds. If your wagons run heavy, move them to the right track. How recent is that? The last hard rain was a month ago. I came through the past 2 weeks before my exile began. It was shedding then. It will be worse now. He made the mental note and filed it. Then, because 4 days had built something between them that made the question feel natural rather than intrusive, he said, "What's south of the pass?" "The caravan's destination is a place called Coppergate." "I know Coppergate," she said. "It is a canyon settlement, built into the cliff faces on both sides of a narrow gorge. Red stone walls, iron gates, a trade market that runs every 10 days. She paused. "I have been there twice. It is a good place. Harder than Redwall. People there are not easy but honest." He thought about that. He thought about the timing of things. Then he said very carefully, "The caravan master is a woman named Sala Marsh." "Yes, the innkeeper's sister. Don't make a face, and she runs a tight operation and doesn't much care what anyone looks like as long as they work." She mentioned she was short a guide for the canyon country. Azra turned her head and looked at him. "I am in exile," she said. "Exile from Bloodhorn territory and the clan. The Thornback Pass in south is outside Bloodhorn Treaty territory. You be clear of the exile conditions from the boundary marker south." She was quiet for a long time. Below them the river caught the last light and turned gold. "You looked this up," she said. "I talked to the territorial warden's assistant, who is a young man who likes to be helpful and doesn't know when to stop talking. You did this for me." "I did this because Sala needs a guide, and you need a reason to move south for 4 months and come back with the exile period done. And because the alternative is 4 more months up here eating trail beans." She looked at the pass for a while. Her jaw was tight in the way it got when she was thinking through something that mattered. "Why?" she asked. Not hostile, just direct, the way she asked everything. "Because you shouldn't be stuck up here for something you didn't do," he said. "And because," he stopped, looked at the canyon, looked at his hands. "Because I'd like it if we were going the same direction." The wind moved through the canyon. She looked at him with those dark eyes that saw everything, and then she looked back at the pass, and after a while she said, "Tell your caravan master she has a guide." The caravan left Redwall on a gray, cold morning with a skin of ice on the water trough, and 6 wagons and 14 people, 2 of whom were guards besides Eli. A broad man named Havoc who'd been on the Iron Road for 20 years, and a young woman named Pell who was on her second run, and trying not to show how nervous she was about the canyon country. Sala Marsh was a compact, practical woman in her 40s with iron-gray hair and a clipboard she never put down, and she'd shaken Azra's hand the night before with the brisk efficiency of someone doing a job, asked 2 questions about the Shelf Road, got 2 answers she was satisfied with, and said welcome aboard. The moment the caravan cleared Redwall's east gate, Eli felt the change in Azra. She'd been careful and contained in the settlement. He understood that, understood the 1,000 small ways that a lone orc woman in a human town had to manage her own presence to avoid giving anyone a reason. Out on the road, with the canyon walls rising and the sky opening up overhead, she moved differently. Her stride opened up. Her shoulders dropped from where she'd been carrying them, close and careful, and she lifted her face to the cold wind like she was drinking it. She fell into step beside him at the head of the column, where the guide traditionally walked, and she was quiet and purposeful and entirely comfortable in the landscape. "Better," Eli said. "Much better," she said. Havoc on Eli's other side glanced at Azra and then at Eli and then said nothing, which Eli appreciated. Pell behind them had been staring at Azra since morning, but it was the wide-eyed staring of someone impressed rather than hostile, and Eli figured that would sort itself out. The first day of the run went clean. They made the river crossing by mid-afternoon, and Azra found a ford that was 6 inches shallower than the marked crossing, which saved them an hour of wagon rigging. Sala noted it on her clipboard and said nothing, but her eyes said she was pleased. They camped on a wide red shelf above the river bend. sheltered from the north wind by an overhang of stone that caught and held the warmth from their fire and spread it back down in a useful arc. And Azra knew to camp there too. She'd camped it before, she said, on a scouting run 3 years ago. After supper, when the camp settled into the quiet hum of its nighttime routines, Eli sat at the fire's edge and Azra sat beside him, their shoulders nearly touching, and they talked in low voices about the road ahead while the stars came out over the canyon rims in their thousands. "The hardest part is day 3, she said. "The narrows. The canyon walls come in to about 30 feet on either side and the road is bad old stones, broken in places. One of your wagons is running a loose rear wheel." "Wagon 4. I flagged it this morning. Sala has the wheelwright's tools." "Good. The narrows is not the place to have a wagon break down." She paused. "There is also the matter of Garvo Pen." Eli looked at her. "He runs the narrows. He has men at the south end, always has. He runs a toll of his own, they're unofficial, which means it is a shakedown. The clan used to keep him off this road. Without us," she didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "How many men? When I came through last, he had 4. He may have more now, knowing the clan is occupied with my exile situation." Eli thought about that, running the numbers. 2 guards beside himself, 14 caravan people, 6 wagons. Garvo Penn's men would be watching for a soft target. "We're not a soft target," he said. "No," she agreed. "We are not." She said the "we" without emphasis, but he felt it settle in his chest like warmth. "Get some sleep," he said. "I've got second watch." She looked at him sideways. "You are very calm." "I've been doing this a long time," he said. "Calm is the job." She stood, stretched, the movement all clean muscle and easy power, and for a moment she looked down at him in the firelight with an expression that was open and warm and entirely unguarded just for that second. "Good night, Eli Carver." "Night, Azra," he said. He watched her walk to her bedroll and told himself very firmly to think about the narrows. Day 2 brought the first real cold. A gray sky that came down low and pressed everything flat, and a wind off the high desert that had gotten serious overnight. Pell asked Azra about the weather at breakfast, which Azra took as a genuine professional question and answered thoroughly, which Eli thought was the beginning of Pell getting over her staring problem. They made good time despite the cold, and by evening they were below the copper-colored pillars and Eli had walked the shelf road on the left side himself, pressed one boot down on the edge, and felt it give in a way that confirmed everything Azra had said. He moved the heavy wagons to the right track, and the shelf road passed without incident. Azra watched him do it from the road's edge, arms folded, face neutral. When he came back, she said, "The track on the right side has a good 6 inches more bearing than the other." "You were right," he said. "I know," she said. He laughed, a short, genuine sound, and she looked at him with something quick and pleased before smoothing her expression back to neutral. That night the cold hit in earnest. The temperature dropped after dark with the kind of intention that meant frost. And by the time Eli came off second watch and handed over to Havoc, his breath was coming out in solid white clouds, and the ground under his boots had gone to iron. He found his bedroll, pulled the wool blanket around himself, and was trying to figure out how to get the rest of his body to stop being cold when a shape lowered itself to the ground beside him. "The fire on the east side went out," Azra said. "The wind." "Come in," he said, which was not nothing to say but was also, in the circumstances, the obvious thing. It was simply too cold to be otherwise. She settled beside him, close enough that the warmth of her, and she ran warm. An orc's body heat was something Eli had been aware of in a general academic way, but had now learned in a specifically useful one, began to cut the worst of the cold. He rearranged the blanket so it covered both of them across the shoulders. They lay on their backs and looked up at the canyon wall above the camp, which blocked most of the sky but showed a strip of hard black heaven at the top, crowded with stars. "Tell me something," she said quietly. "What do you want to know? Why you are a guard on the Iron Road, what you were before." He thought about it. "I grew up in a border town, Grent on the eastern marches. My father ran a Cartwright's shop. I learned the road at 16 because my older brother was going to inherit the shop and there wasn't room for two of us. So I went. He paused. I don't regret it. I like the road. But sometimes I think, he stopped. What? She said. Sometimes I think it would be good to have a place, he said. You know, a place that's yours, not a room at an inn, not a camp, a place. She was quiet for a moment. I had a place, she said. The canyon country, the Bloodhorn territory. It was mine in the way a landscape can be yours because you know it and it knows you. Her voice was even, but there was something underneath it that he recognized as a pain held very carefully. I do not know if I will go back to it the same as I left. You'll go back, he said. How do you know? Because you haven't done anything wrong and things done wrong tend to eventually come out, he said. And because you are clearly not the kind of person who gives up. She turned her head and looked at him in the dark. He could feel her looking even if he couldn't quite see her expression. You are very certain about me, she said, for someone who has known me 5 days. 6, he said. 6, she agreed, with a weight in her voice that felt like acknowledgement. They lay still for a while, close enough to share warmth, and he was exquisitely aware of the length of her beside him and the careful way they were not quite touching and the warmth between them that existed in that gap. Eli, she said quietly. Yeah, thank you for coming up the canyon. Any time, he said. He meant it as a simple thing and it came out meaning more than that. I know, she said. That is what I mean. The frost closed down over the camp and they slept, and Eli's last conscious thought was that he was the warmest he'd been since leaving Redwall. Day 3 was the Narrows. The canyon walls closed in just before noon, red stone slabs heaved up by some ancient violence into near-vertical faces, with the road running between them as a cobbled track laid down by people long dead, who'd done the best they could with the space available. The light came straight down from a gap of sky no wider than a man's arm span, and it lit the canyon floor in a cold white band and left everything else in shadow. They were halfway through when Garvo Penn's men appeared. They came from both ends. Eli counted 6 at the front block and 4 at the rear, stepping out from crevices in the stone where they'd been waiting, quiet and practiced. The front 6 were armed with crossbows and short swords, and their leader was a thick-necked man with a leather coat and the careful posture of someone who expected to be obeyed. Azra had already stopped walking. Eli stopped beside her. Toll Road, the thick-necked man said. His voice echoed flatly between the stone walls. 5 silver per wagon, 40 silver total, pay it and move on. Sala Marsh, behind them, said something very quiet and very specific under her breath. Eli let his hand rest near his sword hilt but didn't draw. He'd done this before. The calculus of the moment was 6 crossbows forward, 4 behind. His people were between them. Drawing would start something that the wagon's passengers would be caught in. Stalling, talking, finding the exit, that was the game here. But Azra moved. She stepped forward past him, and she said in a voice that carried easily in the stone acoustics, Garvo Penn sends his dogs to the Narrows again. The thick-necked man's eyes found her. Something shifted in his face, recognition, and then the specific, ugly look of someone recalibrating from an expected easy mark to something that required more thought. Bloodhorn, he said. Yes, she said. Tell your men to put the crossbows down. You're in exile. You've got no clan standing here. I have no clan standing, she agreed. I have personal standing, which is a different thing. She rolled her neck once, a slow, deliberate movement. You have 10 men. I see your crossbowmen's fingers. None of them are on the triggers, which means they're nervous, which means they've heard stories. Your boss lied to the territorial court about what happened at the Treaty Road and had me exiled to remove the obstacle to his business. That worked for 6 weeks. It stops now. It stops when you pay the, I am going to count to 10, Azra said. Before I reach it, your men will have put the crossbows down and moved to the canyon walls and let this caravan pass. When I am finished counting, if the crossbows are not down, I will start with the man on the left. She paused. 1. You're bluffing. There's 10 of us. 2, she said. Eli watched the crossbowmen. He could feel the tension in the column behind him, the particular held breath of 14 people trying not to move. Havoc, he knew, had already moved to the flank. Pell was somewhere behind the second wagon with her hand on something. 3, Azra said. The man on the far left of the forward group, young, narrow-faced, took a half step back. His crossbow tilted slightly down. 4, another one shifted. The thick-necked leader was watching Azra with the face of a man doing arithmetic he didn't like the answer to. 5. All right, the leader said. He raised one hand, a gesture to his men. Stand down. The crossbows came down. The men moved to the walls. Azra stood in the center of the road for a moment longer, just looking at them, and then she turned and walked back to the head of the column as if nothing particular had happened. She was breathing normally. Her face was calm. The only sign that anything had happened was that her chin was slightly higher than usual and her dark eyes were very, very bright. She came level with Eli, glanced at him, and said nothing. 5, he said quietly. 5 is usually enough, she said, equally quietly. They walked the rest of the narrows without incident. The men behind them didn't follow. Eli kept one ear turned back until the canyon walls opened out into a wide shelf of red desert, and then he let himself exhale. Sala Marsh came up to Azra an hour later and said, "That was worth twice what I'm paying you." "You're paying me adequately," Azra said. Sala opened her mouth, closed it, and wrote something on her clipboard. That night Eli sat beside Azra at the fire, and their arms were pressed together shoulder to elbow because the cold had gotten serious again, and neither of them moved apart. Pell had stopped staring and started asking questions, and Azra answered them with the same practical patience she seemed to give everything, and Eli watched the firelight on her face and the easy way she was beginning to exist in the company of these people, and felt something in him settle deep and firm like a cornerstone going in. When Pell went to her bedroll and Havoc took watch and the fire burned low, Azra said, "You did not draw your sword in the narrows." "No." "Good," she said. "If you had drawn it would have gone differently." "I know, that's why I didn't." He paused. "You didn't need me to." "No," she said, and then quieter, "but it mattered that you were there." He turned his head and found her already looking at him, close and direct, firelight warm on the planes of her face. "Azra," he said. "I know," she said, and it was the second time she'd said those two words like that, like they contained an entire conversation that they'd already had and he just needed to catch up to it. He lifted his hand and tucked a loose strand of black hair back from her face, and she went very still under his touch, not afraid, just receiving it, with her eyes on his and an expression that was wide open and complicated and had nothing left in it that was guarded. "I'd like to kiss you," he said, "if that's all right." "It is," she said, "more than all right." So he did. He leaned forward and she met him in the middle, and it started gentle and turned hungry fast, and her hands came up to his jaw, and she kissed him the way she did everything with total commitment and no apology. And when they finally broke apart, the fire had burned down another half-inch and Eli was fairly sure his heart had rearranged itself permanently. "You took long enough," she said, slightly breathless. "I wanted to be sure," he said. "You have been sure since the first evening," she said. "I wanted you to be sure," he amended. She looked at him for a long moment, and what he saw in her face was something he recognized. It was the same thing he felt, the surprise and the certainty together, the sense of something clicking into place that you hadn't known was missing until it was there. "I am sure," she said. "I have been sure since the canyon rim." He took her hand. She let him. They sat at the dying fire with their fingers interlaced and the canyon night closing around them, and it was the simplest thing in the world. Day 4 brought something worse than bandits. The weather had been building in the west since morning, a wall of dark cloud climbing up behind the high mesa ridge like something with intent, and Azra had been watching it with a level of attention that Eli had learned to take seriously. By midday, she told Sala to push the pace, and Sala pushed it without asking why because she'd seen what Azra was watching. They were trying to make the Redgate shelter, a stone waypost built into a cliff overhang a half-day south before the storm hit. They didn't make it. The storm came in fast and mean and sideways. the kind of desert winter storm that Eli had been warned about by every experienced iron road guard he'd ever worked with, and still wasn't fully prepared for when it arrived. Wind that would knock you sideways if you weren't planted, sleet that came horizontally and hit like gravel, and a temperature drop so sudden and severe it was like someone had opened a door into another season. The wagon stopped. There was no point driving them blind in that kind of weather. You'd lose a wheel off a drop in the first 100 yards. Azra had already moved. Eli saw her at the canyon wall, reading it with her hands flat on the stone, moving quickly along the face until she found what she was looking for, a deep horizontal split in the cliff, 15 feet up, wide enough to be useful. "There," she said. "Get the canvas over the wagons first, then people in underneath them. 2 wagons side by side will give us a windbreak." "Havoc," Eli said. "Already on it," Havoc said. They moved fast in the chaos of the storm, canvas pulled, ropes thrown, wagons positioned with their sides catching the wind so the sheltered pocket between them and the cliff wall became a viable space. Azra worked the ropes with him, her hands fast and sure even with the sleet stinging, and when the last lashing was tied, she turned and helped 2 of the cargo hands haul a crate into position as a wind block, and then started a fire in the protected corner with a speed that should not have been possible given the conditions but was. 14 people crowded into the pocket under the wagons with the fire, and the storm roared over and through the canyon walls, and Eli sat with his back against the wheel of wagon 3 and Azra's shoulder under his arm, and they rode it out. It lasted 4 hours. In that 4 hours, Pell got over being nervous and became competent through necessity, which Eli thought was probably the best thing that could have happened to her. Sala went around the group 3 times checking everyone's state and updating her clipboard in what were clearly shorthand notes of great density. Havoc slept through most of it, which was either a skill or a medical condition. The cargo hands played dice with a set that appeared from someone's vest pocket like a conjuring trick. And Eli and Azra sat together in the firelit pocket under the wagons, her shoulder under his arm and his thumb moving slow circles on her wrist, and talked in the easy, ranging way they'd begun to talk about the road, about Coppergate, about the things she knew of the canyon country that no map had ever captured and that she wanted to show him. "There is a spring in the upper Thornback, 3 miles east of the Blood Clan boundary," she said. "It comes out of the rock already warm. I do not know why. The water is clear, and the pool it collects in is deep enough to swim in even in winter. I want to see that," he said. "You will," she said, with a certainty in her voice that was not reckless. It was simply the certainty of someone making a plan. He pulled her closer and she let him, turning slightly so her back was to his chest, and he had his arms around her and his chin near her shoulder, and she was warm and solid and entirely present. "When the exile is done," he said quietly in her ear, "I was thinking about that place you described, a canyon, a place that knows you." She went still. Not rigid still, in the careful way of someone listening hard. "I'm not much for settling in one place," he said, "but I could be if the place was right, and if the company was right." She turned her head to look at him over her shoulder. The firelight was on her face and her dark eyes were very close. "Are you asking me something, Eli Carver?" she said. "Not yet," he said. "Just thinking out loud," she said. But the corner of her mouth curved and she settled back against him, and he felt her exhale the long, releasing way of someone who has put down a weight they'd been carrying alone. When the storm broke, the canyon was white and silent and strange. The sandstone dusted with the first hard snow of the season, and the road ahead was visible as a pale ribbon winding south toward the pass. They made the Redgate shelter by nightfall, arrived just as the light was gone, built a proper fire in the stone hearth, and ate hot food for the first time in 2 days, and the whole camp had the warm, punchy mood of people who'd gotten through something difficult and come out intact. It was at the Redgate shelter, on the evening of day 5, that things with Garvo Penn came to a head. He arrived in the shelter yard with 8 men and a lot of noise at the middle of supper. He was big, the red beard and the bad teeth the farrier had described were accurate. and he had the wide, comfortable posture of a man used to being the largest financial fact in any room he walked into. His men fanned out behind him and put their hands on their weapons in the casual way of people paid to do that. "Salah Marsh," he said. He wasn't shouting, but his voice projected. "He'd done this before. You're running the road with a guide who assaulted my caravan 6 weeks ago. I want her handed over." The camp went quiet in the bad way. Eli was on his feet. Havoc was on his feet. Pell was on her feet with her hand on her short sword. Azra was already standing. She'd been standing when Garvo Penn walked in, as if she'd heard him coming, and she stood in the firelight with her arms loose at her sides, and her dark eyes on him and her expression absolutely level. "I did not assault your caravan," she said. "I enforced a legal toll agreement under treaty terms, and you sent a runner to Redwall with a lie because you did not want to pay it." "That's your version," Garvo Penn said. He wasn't talking to her. He was talking to Salah. "She's in exile. Exile terms say no lawful employment. She's violated her exile. Hand her over and we have no business with you." "My employment falls outside the exile boundary," Azra said. "Southern Run." Territorial Warden confirmed it. "Territorial Warden," Garvo said, and smiled with the bad teeth. "Salah, be smart." Salah Marsh put down her clipboard very deliberately and said, "My guide is legal. My route is legal. You have no authority in this shelter yard. Take your men and go." "I have money," Garvo Penn said, "which is the same as authority." "It is not," Eli said. Garvo Penn looked at him. His men looked at him. He was not physically intimidating. He knew that, had always known it, had spent 11 years on the road learning to work with what he had. He was average height, average build, brown hair, brown coat, the kind of face people didn't remember. But he was standing square and still, and his hand was nowhere near his sword because he was making a point about not needing it. "You're a guard," Garvo Penn said. "That's right. Step aside." "No," Eli said. Garvo Penn's eyes went to Azra and then back to Eli, and he did the math visible on his face. The math of a man calculating whether the guard was paid well enough to die for the woman standing behind him. "She's worth dying for," he said. "This isn't about dying," Eli said. "You came here to intimidate a caravan into handing over its guide, and you're not going to succeed, and in about 10 minutes you're going to leave because you know it too. 8 men isn't enough for this camp, and you didn't bring enough to make it worth the blood, and you know how the territorial court will look at you if you start a fight in a waypost shelter." Garvo Penn stared at him. His men shifted. One of them on the far right had already taken a half step back. "This isn't finished," Garvo Penn said. "Then finish it properly," Azra said. "You want satisfaction. Challenge me here now in front of everyone." Her voice was calm and even and absolutely certain. "You have the right under Iron Road custom for a formal dispute. I will accept. We settle it tonight and it is done." The shelter yard was very quiet. Eli looked at her. She did not look at him. Her eyes were on Garvo Penn, and her chin was up, and she was giving him the only option that would let him save face without starting a general brawl that he would lose. Garvo Penn, to his credit or his foolishness, Eli couldn't quite decide which, said, "You're challenging me." "I am accepting your challenge," she said. "There is a difference. You came here making demands. I am saying prove them. Iron Road custom, witnessed contest. Whatever you hold against me, we settle it with blades in this yard tonight, and whoever wins owns the outcome." "You'll lose," he said. "Then you'll have what you came for," she said. Eli was on his feet and beside her before he'd made the decision to move. He said, low and fast and meant only for her, "Azra, you don't have to do this." "I know," she said. "He's twice your weight." "Weight is not the relevant variable," she said. "If something goes wrong," she turned and looked at him then, and what was in her face stopped the rest of his sentence. It was not recklessness. It was not anger. It was the clear, unhurried certainty of someone who had spent their entire adult life knowing exactly what they were capable of, and knew this was within it. "I have been carrying the lie he told for 6 weeks, she said. "I have spent 6 weeks in an exile camp in a canyon for something I did not do. I want to be done with it. This ends it." A pause. "Trust me." "I do," he said. "I just be careful." Something moved through her face, warm and fierce and grateful. "Always," she said. Garvo Penn had agreed, because the crowd of caravan workers and shelter travelers watching from the firelight had formed a ring, and he had no way out of it that didn't cost him more than the fight would. His men held his outer coat. He was big, and he moved with the practiced ease of a man who'd been in enough rough spots to know how to handle himself. Azra rolled her wrists, loosened her shoulders, and settled into a guard that was low and patient and nothing like the way Garvo Penn was going to come at her. He came fast. He was a bull fighter. He led with size and speed and expected the impact to finish it. He'd done this before with people smaller than him, and it had worked. She wasn't there when he arrived. She slipped his rush the way water slips a stone, 2 fast steps to the left, and brought the flat of her short blade across his forearm in a strike that was purely for information, testing his reaction speed. He spun faster than she'd expected and got his blade up, and they crossed once, twice, 3 times, quick and specific, neither one of them committing yet. The yard was silent except for the scrape of boots on stone and the ring of iron. Garvo Penn adjusted. He'd realized she was faster than him, and he started using his weight differently, trying to close the range and use his bulk as a press, which was the right strategic choice against a lighter opponent. He landed a shove that sent her back 2 steps and followed it with a thrust that was technically good. She turned it on the blade, redirected it past her left side, and put her knee into his forward leg with a strike that buckled it. He went down on one knee. She stepped behind him in the same motion, put her blade to his throat from behind, and stopped. "Yield," she said. The yard was completely silent. Garvo Penn was breathing hard on one knee with her blade at his throat and the watching faces all around him, and the arithmetic of the moment was simple and unavoidable. "Yield," he said. It came out ground down and spent and genuine. Azra stepped back and lowered her blade. The caravan workers and shelter travelers made various sounds of the released breath variety. Sala picked up her clipboard. Havoc, impressively, had not needed to move the entire time. Garvo Penn got to his feet with the help of 2 of his men. He was not, Eli thought, a stupid man, just a man who'd been comfortable enough for long enough to forget that comfort could end. He looked at Azra with something that had moved past anger into something flatter and more real. "I will have the lie corrected with the territorial court," he said. "My man sent the runner. It was his account." "Was it?" Azra said. A long pause. "He will correct it." "If he does not," Azra said, "I will find you on this road again, and it will not be a witnessed contest." Garvo Penn nodded once, a short stiff motion, and left the yard with his men. The gate of the shelter creaked shut behind them. Eli let out a breath that had been waiting for about 12 minutes. He crossed the yard in 4 strides, and she was already turning toward him, and he took her face in both hands and looked at her, checking, which was the only thing his body wanted to do, and she was intact and present, and the only cut on her was a slight nick on her left forearm that was already not bleeding. "I told you," she said. "You did," he said. He was still holding her face. "You terrified me. I told you to trust me. I trust you completely. I was still terrified." He pressed his forehead to hers, a brief hard contact. "Don't do that again. Garvo Penn will not be on this road again," she said. And then softer, "I am all right, Eli." "I know," he said. "I need another minute." She let him have it. Her hands came up to his wrists, not to pull them away, just to hold on, and they stood in the middle of the shelter yard with the fire at their backs, and the night all around them, and the caravan people giving them a respectful wide berth that Eli appreciated very much. "That was the most extraordinary thing I have ever watched," he said, into her hair. "You have watched caravan roads for 11 years. And nothing in 11 years has come close," he said. She made a low sound that was almost a laugh. He pulled back enough to look at her, and she was watching him with those dark eyes that were warm and direct, and openly pleased by something, by him, he thought. By the fact that he was standing there saying this with his hands on her face and meaning every word. "Eli," she said. "Yeah, kiss me," she said. So he did, in the middle of the shelter yard with the fire at their backs and Havoc politely facing the other direction. And it was not like the careful first kiss at the canyon camp. It was thorough and unambiguous, and had a good deal of the night's released tension in it. And when it ended, she had her arms around his neck, and he had his around her waist, and neither of them was particularly interested in moving apart. "There is a good word in the bloodhorn tongue," she said against his jaw. "For what this is, what is it, Karath?" she said. "It means it is the one you go toward, even when you do not know why yet, even before the reason is clear." He was quiet for a moment, feeling the words settle. "Karath," he said. "Yes," she said, and something in her voice was finished and certain and entirely at peace. They reached Coppergate on day 7. Coming down out of the last canyon pass into a gorge so narrow the sky overhead was a blue strip no wider than a bolt of cloth. And the settlement materialized from the cliff faces on both sides in the way of places that don't announce themselves, carved balconies and arched doorways cut directly into the red stone, connected by rope bridges and switchback stairs. Lantern light warm in 100 windows against the gray afternoon. The floor of the gorge held the market road, cobbled with flat canyon stones, and even in the cold there were people moving on it, traders with packs, a string of pack mules, 2 women arguing vigorously over a bolt of cloth. Sala Marsh navigated the caravan to the waypost compound at the gorge's southern end, a wide yard cut back into the cliff, covered by a natural stone overhang, and began the business of unloading and delivery with the focused efficiency that Eli had come to understand was just how she operated. Azra stood at the gorge entrance and looked up at the settlement built into the walls around her. "You said you'd been here before," Eli said, coming to stand beside her. "Twice," she said. "For market runs, but I did not know it like this." She paused. "I did not know what it could feel like to be somewhere that is not a canyon exile camp." He understood what she was saying. He'd felt it too, the sense over the last 7 days of belonging somewhere that had nothing to do with walls, that the somewhere was made of the company rather than the location. "Sala said the caravan stays 4 days for market business," he said. "Then the return run." "I know." She was quiet for a moment, watching the lantern lights come on as the light faded. "Eli, on the return run, the exile boundary, I will need to stop there. The exile period is," she did the calculation, 4 months and 8 days remain. "I cannot enter Bloodhorn territory until it is done." "I know," he said. "The caravan runs Redwall to Coppergate and back. Redwall is north of the Bloodhorn boundary. You'll be fine. And after the return run, when you are back in Redwall and your contract ends." He'd been thinking about this since the shelter yard. Since, if he was honest, the night at the Canyon Exile camp when he'd watched her roll out her bedroll on the canyon floor and thought about the months ahead of her. "I talked to Sala," he said. Azra looked at him. "She's running spring route starting in 2 months. Canyon Country South Circuit. She asked if I'd take another contract, and I said I'd think about it. And then I said," he paused, finding the words, "I said I might know a Canyon Country guide who'd be free in 4 months and available for regular work." Stared at him. "It's not a solution to everything," he said. "I know that. The clan, the exile record, Garvo Penn's lie, those things still need to work out. But Sala's operation is based out of Redwall, regular work, a room instead of an inn, and the canyon routes." He stopped. "I just thought it might be something until you figure out what comes next." She turned to face him fully, and he met her gaze and waited. "You are doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Arranging things," she said. "Without being asked, carrying things that are not yours to carry." "Maybe they are now," he said, quiet, direct, his eyes on hers. She looked at him for a long time with the same thoroughness she'd looked at him that first day in the exile camp, that look that went all the way through and came back. "Eli Carver," she said. Her voice was careful. "What exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying," he stopped, started again. "I'm saying that I have been a guard on the Iron Road for 11 years, and I have never once wanted the road to lead somewhere specific. And now I do." He held her gaze. "I'm saying I want it to lead to you. Whatever that means, however long it takes to figure out the rest." The lanterns of Coppergate were coming on all around them in the cliff walls, warm points of light in the darkening gorge, And the market road was alive with the sounds of commerce and conversation, and the ordinary life of a place that kept going regardless of what anyone felt about it. Azra reached out and put her hand flat on his chest, over his heart, and she looked at what she found there on his face with an expression of such open, unguarded warmth that it stopped his breath. "Karath," she said, soft. "Karath," he confirmed. She leaned in and kissed him, not the urgent way of the shelter yard, but slow and deliberate and warm, the kind of kiss that is also a conversation and a decision, and a thing that you both remember for a long time. The 4 days in Coppergate had a quality that Eli had not experienced in 11 years on the road, which was the quality of being in a place and actually noticing it. He noticed it because Azra noticed everything, and being with her was like moving through the world with better eyes. She knew the Coppergate market the way she knew the canyon trails, specifically, usefully, without sentimentality. She knew which spice trader ran honest weight and which one used a weighted thumb. She knew the craftsman in the upper balcony who made canyon knives from the local iron and whose blades held an edge through conditions that broke most other metal. She knew the woman who sold hot grain porridge from a cart by the gorge entrance and whose porridge was better than anything available at the Waypost Inn, and she was right. They walked the gorge together in the mornings before the caravan business needed tending, and she pointed things out that he would have walked past, the carved clan marks high on the walls above the settlement, records of who had used this gorge and when, going back generations. An old bloodhorn mark near the top of the south face, faded almost to nothing. "Bloodhorn came through here often," she said, looking up at it. "Before the treaty, long before the territories were formalized. When the canyon country was open to all clans." She paused. "The treaty was supposed to preserve that access, the right of free movement through the corridors. Garvo Penn has been chipping at it for years. Will his man actually correct the court record?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think he will. He yielded in front of witnesses. The Iron Road has its own system of reputation, and he is a road merchant. He cannot afford to have the story told as a coward who refused to honor a witnessed outcome. And if he doesn't, then I will deal with it when the exile ends." She looked at him sideways. "With your help, if you are still offering it." "I'll still be offering it," he said. She took his hand, which she'd been doing in the way of someone getting used to something new, and finding it good, a slightly deliberate gesture that was becoming natural. On the second evening in Coppergate, Pell found them at the grain porridge cart and asked Azra, with the directness of someone who'd been thinking about it for a while, "What is it like, being in exile, being here without your clan?" Azra looked at the question from all sides the way she did before answering. "It is like walking through a room you know well with the furniture rearranged," she said. "You know what should be there. You keep reaching for things that are not where they are, but the room is still the room." Pell thought about this. "That sounds hard." "It has been," Azra said. "It is less so now." Pell glanced at Eli with a look of transparent and entirely undisguised delight, and Eli gave her a look that said absolutely nothing, and Azra pretended not to have noticed the exchange, which meant she had definitely noticed the exchange. On the third evening, when the market had quieted and the gorge was lit with lanterns, and the sounds of Coppergate's night life filtered down from the balcony's music somewhere up in the cliff, a string instrument and a voice, they sat on a wide ledge of stone at the gorge's edge, their backs to the wall, legs stretched out, looking at the strip of sky visible between the cliff faces overhead. "Tell me about the warm spring," Eli said. "In the upper Thornback," she said. "Yes." She leaned back against the stone and looked up at the sky. "It is a half-day's climb from the main trail. You follow a dry channel most of the way. It only runs in melt season, and then the channel bends left around a prow of red rock and the spring is there. It comes out of a fissure in the cliff about 6 feet up and falls into a natural basin. The basin is maybe 12 feet across. The water is very clear and it smells like sulfur, a little, not badly, just a mineral smell. And it is warm, not hot like a fire, but warm like something alive. Have you been there in winter?" "Once," she said. "The steam comes off it in winter." It is extraordinary to see, like a fire made of water. He could picture it, the red stone, the white steam rising, the cold air around it, and the warmth underneath. After the exile ends, he said, I want to see it. You keep saying that, she said. I keep meaning it. She turned her head and looked at him in the lantern light. The music from the balconies drifted down, something with a low, unhurried rhythm that suited the night. What do you want, Eli? She said. Not the spring, not the road. What do you want? He considered it properly, because she asked everything properly and deserved a proper answer. I want to stop going nowhere, he said. I have spent 11 years being competent on the iron road, and I am good at it, and it has never felt like enough. I want to go somewhere. I want to be somewhere. He paused. I want to be where you are. She watched him without interrupting. I know that is a large thing to say when we have been acquainted for 10 days, he said. 11, she said. He looked at her. You keep correcting me, he said. You keep undercounting, she said. The days matter. And her voice was warm and certain, and had no apology in it. He reached out and tucked her hair back from her face the way he had by the exile camp fire, and she leaned into his hand the small amount that she always did, just a fraction, just enough to tell him it was welcome. I do not know what comes after the exile ends, she said. I do not know if the clan receives me back as I left or changed. I do not know what the territorial court will say or do. I do not know if my rank will be what it was. She looked at his hand on her face. But I know what I want to be near when all of that is uncertain. Tell me, he said low. You, she said. I want to be near you. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, and they stayed on the ledge in the lantern-lit gorge while the music played from the balconies above and the night held them together in its dark, warm hands. On the fourth morning, a rider came into the Coppergate waypost yard with a message pouch from Redwall. Sala opened it, read it, and came to find Eli and Azra with the slightly suppressed look of someone carrying news they haven't fully processed yet. From the territorial court, she said. She held out the paper to Azra. Azra read it. She read it again. She held it at her side and looked at the canyon walls above the gorge for a moment. What does it say? Eli asked. Garvo Penn's man filed a corrected account 2 days ago, she said. The account describes the original incident as a legal enforcement action under treaty terms. The court has issued a revised finding. She paused. The exile has been commuted, effective as of the date of the corrected filing. The silence stretched out. Which means, Eli said. Which means it was commuted 3 days ago, she said. I am not in exile. Her voice was very careful, keeping it level. I have not been in exile since we left Redwall, Sala said. I'll give you a moment, and went back to her clipboard with the tact of someone who had seen a lot of things on the road and knew when to absent herself. Azra looked at the paper in her hand. Then she looked at the gorge around her, at the carved walls and the lanterns and the strip of sky. Eli watched her. You can go home, he said. I can go home, she confirmed. Is that, how do you feel about that? She turned and looked at him fully. Her face was complicated relief and something else, something that was about him, about this road, about the past 11 days, and she was not hiding any of it. I feel, she stopped, started again. I feel that it is good, that the lie is corrected, that my rank and my standing are restored, that I can return to the canyon country. A pause. And I feel that the road here has given me something I did not expect to find and do not want to leave behind. He held her gaze. You don't have to leave it behind. You have a contract to Redwall, she said. I do, which ends in Redwall, where Sala's operation is based and where Sala has a spring circuit position open, and she's already asked me. He kept his voice steady. And from Redwall, the Bloodhorn territory is what, a half-day's ride. She stared at him. You already calculated this. I might have already calculated this, he said. Eli Carver, her voice had gone low and warm. You incorrigible man. I told you I wanted to go somewhere, he said. I'm still telling you. She crossed the distance between them in 2 steps and kissed him with a force and warmth that expressed everything the words had been working around. And he caught her and kissed her back. And it was the morning sun over the Coppergate Gorge, and the smell of stone and cold air, and the sound of the caravan going about its business all around them. and none of it touched them because they were entirely absorbed in each other. When they finally separated, she was looking at him with open, undisguised joy, the first time he'd seen her face fully open like that, with nothing held back at all. "I want to show you the spring," she said, "the one in the upper Thornback. When the melt comes in spring, I want to take you there." "I want to go," he said, "and I want to show you the clan territory, the canyon country, my place." Her eyes were bright. "I want it to be your place too." He didn't say anything. He just held her gaze and let her see that it was yes, fully and without reservation, and she looked at what she found there on his face with the expression of someone receiving something they'd stopped expecting to find. The return run to Redwall took 7 days by a route Azra chose that was longer but less exposed, skirting the worst of the predicted weather, and hitting 3 passes she knew to be clear even in early winter. Eli worked the guard detail and Azra guided, and in the evenings they sat together, and the whole caravan had settled into the easy rhythm of a group that has been through something hard together and come out the other side with a collective identity. Pell had become Azra's shadow in the professional sense. She asked questions about every decision, track reading and weather reading, and the logic of the canyon routes, and Azra answered all of them with the patience of a teacher who had found a student worth teaching. Havoc had, at some point, decided that Eli had done something right and expressed this by clapping him once on the shoulder, which was, for Havoc, an elaborate gesture. The night before Redwall, they camped on a broad shelf of desert above the last canyon, and the sky was clear and deep and full of stars in the way that only happens in cold, dry air far from any settlement. The fire was big and good, and the whole camp was relaxed. Eli and Azra walked away from the camp in the dark, not far, just to the rim of the shelf, where the canyon dropped away below them in a mass of shadow, and the stars reflected faintly from the river far below. The wind was cold but mild, and the desert smelled of pine resin and iron and the faint sweetness of whatever bloomed in the canyons even in winter. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he agreed. "I will go north to the Bloodhorn boundary and cross it. I should reach the clan holdings by nightfall." She paused. "I have not seen them in 6 weeks. How does it feel?" She was quiet for a moment. "Like putting something back in the right place," she said. "Like the room with the rearranged furniture being put right." She turned and looked at him. "And also like leaving something." "You're not leaving anything," he said. She looked at him. "I'll be in Redwall by nightfall," he said. "Sala's office is on the trade road 2 blocks from the main gate. I'll sign the spring circuit contract in the morning. The first canyon route starts in 6 weeks. He paused. 6 weeks is not a long time. 6 weeks is not a long time, she agreed. But they were both quiet with the not longness of it, standing at the edge of the shelf with the stars above them and the canyon below. "Eli," she said. "I know," he said. "I want to say it anyway." "Say it." She turned to face him fully, and the starlight was on her face and the Bloodhorn clan marks on her neck, and she was tall and strong and entirely real, and she looked at him with those dark eyes that had been looking at him for 11 days as if he were the thing in the landscape they'd been searching for. "You came up a mountain for a woman you did not know," she said, "with no one sending you, for no reason except that it was right." Her voice was steady and serious. "I have never had that. I did not know what it looked like until I saw it." She reached out and put her hand flat on his chest again, the same gesture as in the gorge. "I am choosing you, Eli Carver, deliberately and completely. You are my Karath. I want you to know that before we go into tomorrow." He covered her hand with his. His chest was full of something too large for his body. "I came up that mountain," he said, "because I couldn't not. I didn't know why yet. I do now." He pressed her hand against his heart. "You are my Karath too. Whatever that means in the Bloodhorn understanding, I am there. I have been there since the canyon rim." She made a sound that was not quite a word, something low and warm in the back of her throat, in the Bloodhorn language that he didn't speak yet but intended to learn. She stepped close and he met her, and she kissed him with a depth and tenderness that was different from all the other kisses. Not the urgency of the shelter yard or the warmth of the gorge, but something underneath all of it, the root of it, the place the whole thing grew from. He kissed her back the same way, his hands in her hair and her arms around him and the stars overhead and the canyon below, and nothing else in the whole of the dark world mattering at all. They stayed at the rim for a long time, talking and quiet in turns, her head resting against the side of his head and his arm around her, and the fire behind them burned down slowly, and the stars moved in their long arcs, and the cold was perfect because they were not cold. Redwall the next morning was gray and cold and smelled of chimney smoke and wet stone, the way it had smelled when Eli had first arrived in it 2 weeks ago. The caravan rolled through the east gate and broke apart in the efficient way of arriving caravans, each wagon peeling off to its destination, Sala already moving toward the trade road office with her clipboard. Azra was on horseback. She'd acquired a horse in Coppergate for the return, a gray canyon breed that was short and solidly built and entirely unimpressed by everything. She sat it well naturally and pulled up at the gate junction while Eli stood on the road below her with the mule's rope in one hand. The morning light was flat and cold and very clear. 6 weeks, he said. 6 weeks, she confirmed. She looked down at him with those open, direct eyes. Eli. If you want to write, the Bloodhorn clan holdings are known to the Redwall postal rider. He delivers twice a month. I'll write, he said. I will also write, she said. A pause. I have not written letters before. I'll write first, he said. So you have a model. I do not need a model, she said. I will simply say what I mean. That will be a better letter than anything I send, he said. She looked at him for a moment with that warm, quiet expression, and then she leaned down from the saddle and put her hand on his jaw and kissed him brief but fully meant, in the middle of the Redwall Gate Road with people walking past on both sides, not caring even slightly about the watching. Carath, she said against his mouth. Carath, he said. She sat up, turned the gray horse north and rode. He watched her go, her straight back and the bloodhorn markings at her neck, and the warrior's leathers the color of dried blood, and the easy, powerful way she sat the horse, the way she moved through the world as if she belonged in all of it. She did not look back. She didn't need to. He knew she knew he was watching, and he knew she knew what he'd said and meant and was going to keep meaning. He stood at the gate until she was past the North Crossroads, and then he turned and went to find Sala Marsh's office and sign a spring circuit contract. The 6 weeks were both long and not long. He worked a short local escort run 2 days out and back, and helped Havoc rig a wagon that had shed a wheel on the town road and wrote 3 letters. Azra wrote 2, both of which were, as she'd promised, entirely direct and entirely her, and reading them was like hearing her voice in the room, clear and warm and specific. The 3rd letter she sent included, without explanation or preamble, a passage in the Bloodhorn language. Below it in common speak she had written, "This is the formal declaration of Carath in the Bloodhorn tradition. You should know what you have been called. It is not reversible. I did not make it reversible on purpose." He had laughed, alone in the inn-room with the letter in both hands, and then he'd sat for a while feeling the weight of the word and the weight of being chosen by someone who chose things carefully and did not change her mind once chosen. He wrote back, "I would not reverse it if I could. Tell me how to say it back." He did not speak Bloodhorn yet, but he intended to learn. She wrote a single word in the return, Carath, with "in common speak" beneath it. "You already say it. That is enough." On the 43rd day, Eli was not counting. He was absolutely counting. A rider came in from the north with a message, and the message was from Azra, and it said, "The clan is restored. The Exile record is expunged. Garvo Penn's man was formally heard by the territorial court last week. The finding stands corrected. My rank is confirmed. Come north on the Spring Circuit Road and I will meet you at the Bloodhorn boundary marker." He went to Sala's office the next morning and said, "The Spring Circuit. Can we start the first run early?" Sala looked at him over her clipboard. Then she looked at the calendar on her wall. Then she said, 2 weeks early. "I've been waiting on a letter from the Coppergate market that just came in. I can make it work." "Good," he said. "Eli," she said. He turned. You're a good guard, you're also, she seemed to choose her words. You are good in the way that this road needs people to be good. Don't waste it on a short life. He nodded. I intend to have a long one, he said. She wrote something on the clipboard. The canyon guide's coming on the circuit with us. If she'll take the contract again, he said. She'll take it, Sala said, with the air of someone who had been on the road long enough to know when things were settled. She was right. The spring circuit left Redwall on a morning that was cold but thinly bright. The kind of morning that promises a warming afternoon. The kind that comes in the first true edge of spring, when the winter has made its final argument and lost. There were 7 wagons this time, and Havoc, and Pell, who had signed on for a second run with the specific stated goal of learning canyon navigation from the best guide currently working the Iron Road. Eli was at the head of the column. He saw her at the Bloodhorn boundary marker before he saw anything else in the landscape. She was simply that immediately visible, standing on the road at the stone post that marked the territory line, the gray horse at her side. She was in her warrior's leathers, the dark red bodice laced close, and her black hair was down today, loose around her shoulders in a way he hadn't seen it before, and the bloodhorn marks at her neck caught the thin spring light, and she was looking at the approaching column with those dark eyes that had been looking at him since a canyon exile camp 6 weeks and 1,000 miles of road ago. He stopped the column with a raised hand and walked forward alone. She met him at the marker. You're early, she said. By 2 weeks, he confirmed. Sala moved the circuit up. Did she? Azra said. Her voice was warm and dry, and she was fighting something with her expression that looked very much like the thing that happened to a person's face when they are trying not to show how glad they are. She did. He stopped in front of her. The stone marker was between them, the territorial line running through its center. How was the homecoming? Good, she said. It was good. My rank is confirmed. The warband is, she paused, changed, as I expected. 6 weeks is long enough for things to shift, but it is home. It is right, she looked at him. I told the clan about you. He raised an eyebrow. I told them I had declared Karath, she said, formally, in a letter. What did they say? They said a human on the Iron Road. She tilted her head. Some of them, others, something moved in her face. Others said it was time I stopped running the canyons alone, that I had been alone too long. Her voice had gone quiet. They were right. I just did not know it. He stepped over the boundary marker. She watched him do it, and her expression opened all the way up. He took her face in his hands the way he had in the shelter yard, checking, and she was wholly present and unhurt and beautiful in the spring light, and her hands came up to his wrists again. I have been alone a long time too, he said. I know, she said. I will not let you be alone again. He kissed her. She kissed him back. Behind him, the column had stopped respectfully, and the spring road stretched ahead of them into the canyon country, and the sky was that particular pale blue of early spring that looks like a promise being kept, and the season was turning, and nothing was alone anymore. But the story was not finished. Not the way stories finish when they are about 2 people finding each other, which is to say it was not finished with the kiss at the boundary marker, but with the night after the first full day back on the road together. They camped on a ledge Azra knew, a wide cut shelf high on the canyon wall above the floor, accessible by a narrow trail that only the guide would have known to use, that looked out over the whole sweep of the Thornback country, red stone and canyon shadow, and the distant gleam of the spring melt running in the floor far below, and overhead, stars. The camp was settled. The fire was down. The others were in their bedrolls. Havoc was on watch below. Pell had, with characteristic Pell directness, told Azra to show her the Upper Canyon Trail tomorrow, and then gone to sleep with the efficiency of someone saving energy for learning. Azra and Eli sat at the ledge's edge, and there was no wind, only the still, cold, perfect air of the high canyon in the first week of spring, and the stars were a solid thing overhead, more stars than sky, and the world below them was vast and dark and beautiful. The spring, she said, the one in the upper Thornback, it is 2 days north of here. I know, he said, I've been looking at your maps. She looked at him. We have 4 days before the circuit needs us back. We do, he confirmed. 2 days up, she said, 2 days back. That's exactly how it works out, he said. She was very close, their shoulders together, and the warmth between them was the warmth of something that had already decided everything and was simply waiting for the night to be the right kind of night. Eli, she said, very quiet, very close. I know, he said. I want to say it. Say it. I love you, she said, in a voice that had nothing held back in it at all. I have been sure of it since the canyon rim. I love you in the Bloodhorn way, which means completely. And I love you in whatever the human way is, which I believe is also completely. And I want you to know it with no uncertainty because you deserve to know it, and I am done waiting to say it. He turned and looked at her, and she looked back, and what was on her face was the most wide-open, undefended, fiercely honest thing he'd ever seen a person's face do. I love you, he said. Azra Bloodhorn, I love you. I have been in love with you since the night at the Canyon Exile camp when you handed me a cup of pine resin tea and told me to sit down because I'd climbed a mountain for you. He took her hand, both hands, held them. You are the first place I have ever wanted to stay. You are the first person who has made me feel like I was somewhere instead of just passing through. And you are, he stopped, found it. You are extraordinary. And I intend to tell you so every day I can manage it. She made the sound she'd made before, that low, warm sound in her throat that was Bloodhorn and not common speak, and that he was going to learn to say back to her if it took years. Then she pulled his hands toward her and stood, drawing him up with her, and she was tall against the stars and the canyon below, and the firelight from the camp was low and warm behind them, and she looked at him with open desire and open love and open certainty and said, "Come with me." She led him away from the camp, further along the ledge, to a natural alcove in the cliff face where the stone curved around and the wind was shut out entirely, and the rock was smooth and still held the day's warmth in its face. The stars were directly overhead through the open top of the alcove, a ceiling of pure night, and the canyon country spread away below them in its full, enormous beauty. He took her face in his hands and she took his, and they looked at each other for a long breath. Then she kissed him deep and certain and claiming, the way she did everything with full commitment, and he kissed her back the same way, and the night closed around them, and the world fell away until it was only this. The red stone warmed by the day, the stars overhead, her arms around him and his around her, and the wide, dark, beautiful desert night bearing witness as two people who had found each other on a hard road chose each other fully at last, under the open sky. Later, a long while later, the stars having moved considerably in their ancient business, they lay together in the alcove's warmth, her back against his chest and his arms around her. The canyon country spread out before them in its night colors, and the silence was the best kind, full and peaceful and shared. "The spring," he said after a while. "Tomorrow," she said. "We'll make it in a day if we push." "We will not push," she said with comfortable finality. "We will take our time." He held her closer. She settled back against him. "Eli," she said, "yeah. You said you wanted a place, a pause, the canyon country, the Bloodhorn territory, the warm spring in the upper Thornback." Her voice was quiet. "It is yours. Whatever I have here is yours. I am telling you so." He closed his eyes. Outside, the canyon held its long, star-filled breath. "And whatever I have on the road," he said, "whatever I know, whatever I am worth out here, that is yours, however you want it." "I know," she said. "That is why I am saying it." They were quiet together, in the alcove carved in the red stone cliff above the canyon floor, with the stars overhead and the spring night around them and the whole of the road ahead. He thought about the Exile camp, the lean-to, the careful fire, the spear-planted point-up in the dirt. He thought about her standing in front of it with those measuring eyes and asking who sent him. He thought about what it had felt like to say no one and have it be the right answer, the only answer, the answer that started everything. No one had sent him. He had come on his own. He had come because he'd heard that someone was alone and cold, and had decided without calculation that that was wrong and should be fixed. He had come because something in him that was older than reason knew before he'd even seen her face, that there was something at the top of that canyon worth climbing to. He had been right. He had not known then how right, but he knew now. He pressed his lips to her hair, and she made a sound of quiet contentment and pulled his arms tighter around her. And they slept under the stars while the canyon held them. And the world they were building out of a road and a fire and a word in a language he was learning, and a promise that had been made before it was spoken, was as real as stone. In the morning they broke camp with the caravan, and Azra led the column north through the canyon country that she knew like a language. And Eli walked at her side at the head of the column. And Pell was asking questions already. And Havoc was doing his particular impression of a man who has never once felt any kind of feeling about anything. And Sala was writing on her clipboard. And the spring sun was out over the red stone, and turning the canyon walls to something that looked like living fire. And Azra and Eli walked the road together, their shoulders close, talking about the route ahead and the weather and the shelf road conditions and the market at the next waypost. And between all the useful things they talked about the spring in the upper Thornback and what they would do when the circuit ended, and where the Bloodhorn clan's canyon country looked in midsummer and what it felt like to have a place, a real place, and what it felt like to have a real person, and to know that the road, for once, was leading somewhere specific. It was a good road. It was the best road Eli Carver had ever walked. He had come up a canyon for a woman he didn't know, with no one sending him, for no better reason than that it was right. And the road from that canyon had led him here, to this spring morning and this red stone country and this woman striding at his side as if she'd always meant to end up there. No one had sent him. He had come on his own. And it had been, without question, the best thing he had ever done.